In part 2 of this video, I rebuilt the seat bottom cushions and installed new upholstery. Here in part 3, I'll install the seats in the car. But before I show the installation of the rear bucket seats, I want to make a quick point about their alignment. In this old brochure, one photo shows the seat backs folded down. You can see they have an even gap with the floor of the cargo area all the way around. But looking at these images I scraped off the web, lots of Chargers have uneven gaps. I suspect this is because if you want the tops of the seat backs to be level when they're in their upright position, then you might have to adjust their outer corners down a bit. Reason being that the cast iron bracket inside the console, which supports the inboard side of the seat back, might be positioned too low. Unfortunately, once the carpet is glued onto the console, you can no longer adjust this inboard bracket, meaning the only way you can align the seat back is by adjusting the outboard bracket. I'll demonstrate this later. Meanwhile, I watched all of the old Dodge Charger commercials I could find on YouTube. They too showed misaligned seat backs with uneven gaps. Whether we blame the Dodge engineers for a flawed design or blame the assembly line workers for careless implementation, we're still left with the challenge of aligning these seat backs. Now, on to the installation. So here I am in the back of the car on the passenger side, and this bracket mounts up in here and it holds one side of the seat. Now, I don't know how they did this at the factory, but I haven't found a good way to have this already in place and then install the seat. What I'm going to do, I'm going to basically put the bracket onto the seat and then attach the bracket to the car after the seat is in position. The best way to explain this, on the seat, you might recall we got this carriage bolt that kind of flops around. There's another piece of hardware that goes with it that mates up. It has this square opening that mates up with the carriage bolt. And then on the other side there's a square. This square is recessed, this square is sticking out, and it mates up with this chrome bracket. So that piece has to go on like so. Then you've got a big shiny washer and a nut. That doesn't have to be tightened yet. We'll worry about that once we get the seat installed. Anyway, here we go. Make sure you got this swivel bolt such that this lock nut is backed off all the way. That way you can screw the swivel bolt as far in as possible. We'll adjust that later. Get your bracket so that it's out of your way, pointing towards the front of the cushion. And then we're aiming for this hole on the console for the swivel pin. Slide that in there. Then get the bracket onto those 3 studs. The single stud that's on the bottom is pretty easy to reach from underneath the seat like this. So I'm starting with that one. Then you got to get the top ones in by holding the seat to give yourself some clearance. Get that carpet flap out of the way and get your nut on there. Quick tip, use something heavy to hold down that carpet flap so you don't have to work around it like I did. So, I don't know if you can see that down in there, but there's a stud right here now. It's a nut with a captive washer. Let's see, get my knee in here to hold the seat. Hold up your flap. And of course, you can reverse this process to get the seat out. I believe that's what I did. It's been so long though, honestly don't remember. All right, it's threaded, barely. So now, these take a 7/16. I got this little extender on there just to make it a little easier to reach up inside. I kind of jiggle the bracket around to make sure it's properly aligned. The little ratchet's kind of janky. It slips a little. Don't have to be super tight. I think I mentioned it on another video. I was surprised how loose all the hardware was on this car, like from the factory. Stuff that had never been taken off before. It's just like not torqued down much. Not that that's a problem, I was just kind of surprised. Okay, so those 3 nuts are on. Then we can put that flap back down. And we've already got our swivel action starting to work, but I want to hook up this arm here. Lines up right there. For this bracket, we've got a bolt with a 9/16 head on it and a spring washer. You can see it's got a curve to it. That just goes through the arm, and you bring your seat forward a little bit so you line it up with the hole. It's just my janky ratchet. Okay, so the release handle works up and down. Now, still not done. We got to adjust these things. So there's a little bit of lateral slop. That's not a big deal. You take your 11/16 wrench and you grab. Come here, GoPro. I'm going to take my 11/16 and turn the stud itself, not the lock nut. I'm lefty loosening it so that it moves away from the seat, essentially. It takes out lateral slop. And then once you get it where you want it, you can of course cinch down that lock nut. And it's probably easier to just do it this way. Yeah. Access it better from above here. It just bottomed. Okay. There we go. So the reason for doing the stud first and taking out the lateral slop is that then that puts enough tension on the hardware on this side. You gotta make sure it's lined up. You gotta make sure that this piece, that square is locked into the rectangular hole on the mounting bracket. Make sure it's locked. See, I'm not quite there yet. Down here's the nut, and I want to make sure that it's up all the way for now, because we want these 2 corners of the seat to basically be flush with this cargo area. And once you have it where you want it, then you lock it down. That's it. Piece of cake. Now we can put the seat bottom in there. I mentioned this earlier, but I forgot to bring it up. There's this clip, speed nut clip kind of thing with a long sheet metal screw on it. This little clip goes on the seat bottom. The screw goes through and attaches and keeps the seat from, you know, hopping around. So I got to add that to the seat bottom before we can do that. I don't know how bright that is on camera. There's a hole right there, punched through the frame, and the clip has to sit on that. Hopefully you can see this well enough and understand what I'm doing. Taking the little clip, sliding it over the hole. Then I gotta make a hole with my ice pick to pass the screw through. This is where I get to poke my finger. Alright. So just jam the ice pick through there. And I should point out how this thing hooks up. This bar here receives this rod loop, whatever it's called. This rod loop goes into that bracket on the floor. And then this little tab is going to be used with the screw that I was just talking about. So slip that rod up under the bar, back there. Then I'm going to just feel with my hand in this other corner, make sure I got that rod loop that's in this front corner engaged in that bracket. Then there's the bracket on the front, which take the screw, because I gotta get it through the vinyl and into that speed clip. I think it's going. There you go, that's what you want to see. That seat bottom should move when you tighten the screw. Let's see if it sits. Will it sit? Oh yeah, that's nice. Okay, so one more to go. Let's get her done. And I noticed something this time around. This piece of hardware has to sit flush to this plate, and it's not. The one on the right hand side of the car is sitting just fine. For some reason this one doesn't want to sit flat, and because this carriage bolt has a square base and there's a recessed square hole for it, those two have to pair up. And the plate gets sandwiched between them. I'm not getting the flush fit that I need in there. It's on this welded on piece here that the hang up is. I'm going to use a step bit, open that up just a tiny bit. Let's try it again. Oh yeah. Much better. Now I have to straddle this plate, or sandwich the plate. Oh yeah. That's so much better. I bet that'll make a huge difference. So put your carriage bolt in. I'll fast forward through these next few steps, since I already covered them in part 2 of this video. You know, taking a little bit of time. Go back forth. Let's do the same time. Work on something multiple fasteners. A little bit of time. Go back forth. There's a little pin. You call it a shear pin. I don't know if that's the right name of this application. So basically, fishing with a small punch. A small enough punch. That's fine. You got handle, which points back towards the starboard side. I'm going to go ahead and put this stuff on, including the bracket. Loosen it up just enough to have enough slop so you can adjust it once you get it in the car. All right, as before, I've got the bracket already attached with the nut. The 9/16 nut is just finger tight, so it can flop around a little. And then the swivel bolt, I want to make sure I've got the lock nut so that it's backed all the way off, and then the stud itself is all the way in. Get this carpet flap out of the way. I use a weight. You can use a heavy book, car part, whatever you got on hand that's heavy enough. This plate's only 7.5 pounds, and that's more than enough weight. Okay. When you go to put this in, get that bracket out of your way, bringing it forward like this. Then the swivel stud has to go into that hole on the console. There you go. As soon as that's in, you can swing the bracket up and onto your 3 studs. And then it'll pretty much support its own weight. But I like to get my legs up underneath it so I can kind of hold the weight of the seat back on my legs. That makes it a little easier to get in there with these nuts. So you can access these top 2 nuts with the seat back in this position. But to get to the bottom nut, you got to kind of let it drop down. So you just reach down underneath, find that stud, put that on there. Okay. Now you can see all this stuff kind of moves around, and we got to get it into the right spot. You got to lift up the seat back and the bracket together. And there are witness marks on that bracket from the factory. So I try to get close to those. I use a 7/16 socket on an extender. So this is kind of the trickiest part. Just holding everything in place while you cinch down these 7/16 nuts. To access that bottom nut, you got to lower the seat. Well, we'll see how close I get. So far this corner's too low, but I may be able to adjust that out over here. Yeah, so this corner is too low. I'm gonna shove this up as high as I can and then stitch down this 9/16 nut, hold it in place. It's not too bad, but it's not quite where I want it yet. So I'm gonna fuss around with this bracket some more. So while I'm holding that up as high as I can, I'm gonna cinch down the bottom nut first. Believe it or not, it can make a difference whether you tighten the top ones or the bottom one first. Ratchet slip. Oh yeah, that's better. pretty good. It's not exactly where I want it yet. These guys nice and loose so they're not impinging on the movement of the bracket. They're barely on there now. So you gotta hold the seat and the bracket up while you do this. There, I got just one tight. See what happens when we tighten these down. Oh yeah, that's much better. I'm going to shove this down. Go. That looks great. This arm over here comes down and attaches to that hole with this special bolt that has a shoulder on it and a wavy washer. What you got to do is pull the seat forward a little bit and help line up the bolt with the hole. This is a 9/16. Do a quick movement check on this thing and make sure it moves nice. Yes. There is an adjustment to be done on that swivel stud. What you got to do, get down in there with your 11/16 wrench and do a lefty loosen on the stud to take out any lateral slop there might be. I don't have any, so I'm not even going to sweat it. I'm going to have to do it this way. Get that lock nut and tighten it so that it cinches down against the seat, and then that way the stud won't move around on you. There we go. Very nice. Now we can put in the seat bottom, slide up under the bar, feel around up in this front corner till you get the bracket engaged with that rod loop. And I do like to use my ice pick to line up this front hole for the screw. It is a little tricky sometimes getting that screw in there. I think that's it. Feels like it. Where are you? Yeah, it's threading. You'll know it's working when the seat starts moving. There it goes. All right. Seams line up. Beauty. Let's give it a sit. Oh yeah, that's nice. All right. I think we're done. Thanks for watching.